Good afternoon, folks, and welcome. It is Thursday afternoon, so you're close to making it to the end of the week. Congratulations. First of all, I'd like to thank Composite Games for supporting the channel. If you want to support the channel, then make sure you use the promo code down below, Northern Exile, on checkout at their store to get 5% off of your new order. To make sure that you're getting a fair deal, they do 20% off most of their orders anyway, so you could be getting up to 25% off of Games Workshop stock, or any stock that you want to get into, to be honest with you. Still working on a few more things in terms of the sponsorships for the US stuff. That is right around the corner, I assure you. And every single video, I'm saying that right now, but I'm just trying to keep you guys up to date, to be honest with you. Today's video will be on 3D printing, but first of all, before we get into any of that, we've got to look at the Astral backers. Thank you very much if your name is on this list. If it is not, then Friday is the day when I add your name to the list. But thank you very, very, very much. If you like what I do here on the channel, then try and support me down on Patreon down below, or become a member of the channel to get yourself on this lovely, lovely, lovely big old board here. And to be honest with you, even if you want to sub to the channel, that is amazing. That is a free thing that you can do to help the channel along with the old algorithm, like the video, things like that. I need to do this now, because for months I've not been doing this. I've been being a bad YouTuber, and then letting you get away with all sorts. As in, I'm not, like, drumming in your ear holes that I want you to do things for me. But then, here we go. The modern world, ladies and gentlemen. This is where we are. So, first of all, I wanted to just do a little bit of a check-in with 3D printing to see just what the bloody hell is going on. And if, as modelers, as people who do our hobby, we can do a bit more to help people out. We'll see. So, first of all, this video will be split into a few parts. It won't be a very long one, because I'm going to try and do these every 5 or 6 months, just in case my opinion changes, or the paradigm of 3D printing changes, just like I did with gatekeeping the other week. First thing we're going to do is go over what I think recasts and 3D printing where they should be used, right? And then we're going to look at a few pictures, because I challenged you guys, if you think 3D printing is as good as Games Workshop's models, to send me some pictures. And I'll go through them. I've not cherry-picked these, I've literally just picked the ones that I can find that you've sent to me. And here we go, we're going to have a little look at them together. And I'm going to show you what I think they should be used on and what I think they shouldn't be used on, and whether or not I think the quality is of Games Workshop standard. So, first of all, let's get into what I think recasting of 3D printing actually should be, alright? So, when we're coming into recasts, or just 3D printing in general, let's throw the term recast out for a moment. Making models that Games Workshop no longer sells, for me, is fine. Right, if Games Workshop don't sell a model, that's on them. They're not providing a service, but they are providing rules. At that stage, I'm sure Games Workshop would prefer that you just proxied another Games Workshop model as that model. But to be honest with you, it's a bit cheeky on their part, you know? You do have rights as a consumer to pick and choose what you want to do with your own money. And I think if you want to exercise that right in saying, hey, there are no rules for these Imperial Guardsmen. There are rules for this Imperial Guards regiment, but there are no models. Well, I'm going to go 3D print some. I'm going to get some nice files. I'm going to 3D print some, and I'll have them as part of my army. That's no problem, because you're not harming anyone. You're not going out of your way to take money away from the hobby. No, they're not selling models for that model, so you can just go ahead and do what you want. Exactly. You know what I mean? So, doing that, or replacing 1 or 2 models in your army in which you hate the original sculpts, or the sculpts are very old, that's fine by me, right? So if you have a Tyranid force, or even a Grey Knight force, let's be honest, where most of your models are, you know, 20, 30 years old, the way that you can tell Games Workshop that isn't going to fly anymore is to start getting your own models, 3D printing your own models, going on Etsy, as we'll see later, and places like that, and getting your own models to fill out this gap in the market, where you don't want to use these silly squat Grey Knights. You actually want to go use other, you know, you go use like really cool models. I've been very lucky in the fact that I've been able to use Stormcast Eternals as the basis of my Primara-sized Grey Knights that look a lot better than normal Grey Knights. But not everybody is that lucky. You know, some people will need to go out there and do some 3D printing to get themselves some nice looking Grey Knight models. Not a problem with me. You know what I mean? Because Games Workshop are not providing a service that's good enough for you to be spending the amount of money that they're asking for a Grey Knight squad. A Grey Knight squad right now is £32.50, if not more, depending on where you are. That's ridiculous, because those are extremely old models. They are not fit for service anymore. They should be thrown out. They should be updated already. They can figure out how to update Space Marines 9 or 10 times a year. Then why can't they figure out to update Tyranids? Why can't they figure out to update Imperial Guard? These are armies that need... Necrons. These are armies that have needed love for decades now. And because you still keep giving them money, nothing will change. So one way that you can stop giving them money is to make sure that you have models that you're proud to have on the tabletop, right? Now, what I will say is, Games Workshop managers are told, in no uncertain terms, if somebody comes in with a recasted army, or with an army that's mostly 3D printing, boot them out the store. They shouldn't be gaming in the store. And you know what? As much as it is your right, it's your right to do that, it's their right to not have you in the store. I'm sorry, this swings both ways, right? You don't get to just walk into a store, willy-nilly, and expect everybody to just be accepting of your 3D printed models when you haven't spent hardly any money on them. Especially when the guy next to you has probably spent £500, £600 of hard-earned cash on a similar army. He has the right to look at you and go, listen, mate, this is a Games Workshop store. Is that really appropriate? This guy's trying to sell models to keep a roof over his head, and you're walking in here with models that just don't have any sort of bearing on that. Bit of a dick move, right? You have every right to print whatever you want and have it in your army if Games Workshop aren't providing that service. You do not have the right to walk into a hobby store and start playing with these models if they don't want 3D sculpted models in the store. Because they have a reason for that, right? They don't sell the models that you're using. They're providing a space for free. They're under no obligation to allow you into the store playing 3D printed models, alright? 7-piece on that, okay? Now, the one thing I really hate, and I've seen this quite a few times, creating entire armies, and this is recasting, creating entire armies and adding nothing back into the hobby through purchasing it in a store is not fine with me. Don't be that guy. Creating entire armies recasted of anything that is already sold in a store, that's not a good thing. Not a good thing. In fact, it's stealing. Right? When you recast an entire army from you buy it from a recasting site, that's stealing. You're stealing somebody else's intellectual property. That's what you're doing. Okay? You're adding nothing into the hobby. You're paying this no mark somewhere in another country to 3D print your models or to do your models for you, right? You're adding nothing into the hobby. You're adding nothing into the space. You know, you're basically a football agent. It's the analogy that I wanted to use going into this. So a football agent, for those of you who don't know, footballers back in the day, they would be paid by a football club, and if a football club wanted to sign you, they would pay your release fee, which is basically, buying you out of your contract. So they pay the club that you're playing for, the release fee for that contract, and then you would then go and sign with that club, and you'd probably get a little bit more money. And you sign the contract, there you go. That's what you're getting paid every week. Now we have agents who are the go-betweens between the players and everybody else. And so everything that the player does now, the agent takes a 10% cut. And if you're getting a big contract, the agent can demand more fees on top of that for his services, or my player isn't signing for you. That money doesn't go back into the game. It doesn't go back into the sport. It goes directly into that agent's pocket for doing basically fuck all. Right? If you're paying a scalper, if you're paying a recaster for your models, you're a football agent of Warhammer. You're putting money into something, into you're basically a football player paying an agent. You're giving somebody money that's never seen again by the hobby. You're not helping a hobby store stay open. You're not helping a hobby store get more stock. You're not helping a hobby store advertise and get more customers. You're not helping Games Workshop pay for more molds to get better models. You're doing none of those things, right? There are ways to let Games Workshop know you're not happy without destroying the hobby. All right? Those are my feelings on recasts before we go anywhere else. Okay. saying that, let's look at some models. So, the first one, and again, these will not have names attached to them because I don't want anyone being judged, and I don't want anyone, some of these, I have got one or two that are of fully recasted armies that I haven't used because their names are on the pictures, and I don't want to out them as people who do recasting. But anyway, this is more about, are 3D printing models anywhere near the standard of Games Workshop? Because quite controversially, I've said they're not just yet. So, this first one, I think you can see, this is a female lore guard that is going to be used in a D&D game. Fair enough, you know what I mean? Like this is the kind of thing where I'm like, yeah, recast away. You know, if you're going to use it in D&D or whatever, yeah, whatever, it's fine. Do what you want to do, right? Because obviously you're mostly going to use these models in your own home. Again, not a problem. Just go and do whatever you want to do. I think you can tell by the sound of my voice, this is not Games Workshop standard 3D printing. Nowhere near. Do you know the one thing that shows me that it isn't? Her left hand. Okay. That left hand may have a bit of paint on it that hasn't been thinned down. Thin your paint, thin your paint. Sorry, I have that tick whenever I don't see thinned down paints nowadays. Yeah, that around the book, that is not a hand that you would see on a Games Workshop model. If we want to go and see the Lorgar model, the actual Lorgar model, I'll pull it up actually. This is me being a very Forge World. There we go. Right, let's have a look at this, shall we? Right, save image. For God's sake. Do you know what? I'll get it up in a minute. Let me just have a little look here. What? Yeah. Okay, so the actual Lorgar model, let's be honest, when we're looking at this, I'm just going to save this here and drag it over. You are kidding. Let me just save this, please. Okay, go. Lorgar. Brilliant. So, I'm going to drag this over now, and we can have a look at these side by side, and have a little look whether you think this is anywhere near what we're looking at. So, Lorgar, this is a side-on perspective, obviously, but beautifully painted, I'll say that much. But let's have a look at the model side by side. I needed to find one. This is why I was struggling. I needed to find one that hadn't been converted so I could be fair. But let's have a look at side by side here. Okay. So you tell me whether that model right there is the same standard as the one on the left. I think you tell it isn't, right? That this is not the same standard at all. These are two completely different models. And in terms of 3D printing, I won't be doing this for every single thing, but in terms of 3D printing, if we're using models as a case of, you know, people will blindly tell me, what are you talking about? 3D printing's so much better than Games Workshop models. No, they're not. They're not. Some of the evidence that I've been shown, I've seen nothing so far to tell me that that's the case. Okay? Maybe one instance. But it's always one instance. It's not like 2 or 3, 4 or 5. It's always 1 or 2 where someone's gotten a particularly good sculpt out, a particularly good file from a very good 3D printer. And again, 3D printing is very nebulous, so don't get your panties in a bunch if I'm having a go at 3D printing because you've got this $3,000 3D printer that gives you Games Workshop standard models. I'm telling you now, I could probably look at your models and go, that's not Games Workshop. Within a few seconds. I'm telling you now. Any educated eye would be able to look at that and go, yeah, not Games Workshop. I don't mean by the pose, I don't mean by the way it looks, I mean the quality of the model. The literal quality of the model. Right? You can certainly get close if you spend more money on a 3D printer, but people come to me all the time and they say, well, I've got a $200 3D printer and it looks just the same. Well, let's continue, shall we? Because I don't think it does. I honestly don't think it does. Alright, so this is what I would say is a professional 3D printed model, right? This is something that you could pay for, that you could have off an Etsy store, or you could have on any sort of store like online where they sell D&D type models that you can also use in Warhammer 40,000. Now, I I'm fully aware that this guy has paint on him, and it looks like it's a very nicely painted model. But I can only look at this and squint and see that it's a Games Workshop model. If I squint here, I think, yeah, okay, that's probably a Games Workshop model. When I open my eyes and actually look at the details, oh, no. Got very blocky details. Some of the proportions of the arms and legs are a bit off. The left hand, the claw hand, looks nothing like a claw. It looks like a bit of a mess, right? It just looks like, you know, melted metal that's on his arm. Now, it might be melted metal that's on its arm, but that doesn't mean, if we're going for a power claw look, that's not what it looks like, okay? You know? I love that he's wearing a box. I think that's hilarious. And I think Games Workshop could really learn from people like this in getting a bit more humour in their especially the orc models. The gun itself looks like a great pipe weapon. I like that kind of a look. But this is probably one of the best examples you're going to get of an actual normal model that isn't trying to knock it out the park. A normal, truthful model made through 3D printing, right? If we're looking at Games Workshop standard models in terms of their new Primaris models, the brand new models that are coming out these days, that's another thing that we need to talk about. Is that when I say your models from 3D printing aren't up to Games Workshop standards yet, okay, I mean the brand new stuff, because people complain at me all the time. Well, it looks better than a Necron, looks better than an old orc. Yeah, because as I've just said, those models are decades old. So if you want to replace them, have at it, son. Go for it, right? But I can still look at your model and go, yeah, the modern Games Workshop stuff that's being created right now, as in the stuff that's just coming out, blows this stuff away. It just does. And anyone who thinks it doesn't is either being disingenuous because they don't like Games Workshop, right? And I'm being harsh, but they're either being disingenuous or they just really, 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 really don't want to give Games Workshop any money, right? You know me. Anybody on this channel knows me. I am not a GW apologist, right? In fact, I'm against them 8 times out of 10. But that doesn't mean I'm blind, right? It doesn't mean I don't have a pair of eyes and I can't look at one set of models and another set of models and say, you know, Subject A is better than Subject B. The Primaris Marines that I've got in the other room, right, the brand new Age of Sigmar models that I've got in the other room, they blow shit like this out the water. They just do. You look at the orcs in Age of Sigmar. They're much better than this. You know? Without being harsh. They are. They just are. This is a top quality 3D printed model. That's why it's cheaper. Right? The reason why it's cheaper is because it's not made from these really expensive molds that Games Workshop use to create these, like, amazing miniatures that they bring out. I will have a go at Games Workshop for everything, but don't expect me to say things that aren't true. Games Workshop make the best models in the world. They just do. That's why we buy their models, okay? We're not silly. We don't just throw money at them for no reason, okay? No matter how much you don't like Games Workshop, they sell really good models, for the most part. Do they need to upgrade certain parts of their process? Do they need to upgrade certain parts of their model range? Yes. Which is why I've come down on your side when I say, look, if you want to go and do 3D printed models for certain factions, one of them is 40k orcs. If you're totally married to 40k orcs, this is not a bad alternative. This guy right here, this is hilarious. And it's not a bad alternative. Right? But if you're looking for if you're looking to convert an Age of Sigmar orc to be 40k and then compare it to this, I would go with the Age of Sigmar orc. Right? So, going on to something that is quite controversial in the hobby these days. Oh, by the way, Yorkshire Tea have brought out green tea that is strawberry and chamomile. I shit you not. I need some chamomile when I do these videos sometimes because I feel like I'm going to have an aneurysm. I will say though, it's very bitter. Ugh. Anyway, it's good for you though. Get on with it. So, a controversial thing in the hobby is how much certain units cost. Titans, for example, cost an arm and a leg. We're talking thousands of pounds if you want to go the whole hog. Now this is a Warhound Titan, so it's not a large Titan by any means, it's quite small. But it would still set you back a pretty penny. Now, what this person has done is they have 3D printed a full Titan. And what you can do is, when you look at the larger models like this is when you'll stop seeing the difference in quality between Games Workshop and a 3D printed model. Because this model is so big that all you need to do is get the very big parts of it right, and the eye will stop trying to gauge whether it's a Games Workshop model or not. Okay? You're not pulled out of your suspension of disbelief until, and this is a lovely model, but until you look a bit closer. Now, as you can see, there are mold lines from the 3D printer all over this model. But they're on the gun, they're on the faceplate, they're on the carapace there, they're everywhere, right? These are all things in 3D printing that you generally won't get away with if you're doing a full-on model of this size with lots of large, flat surface areas. The very reason why a steel mold is so good is because it doesn't generally have these rough edges on large surface areas. Which is why I really, really hate what they're doing with the new Horus Heresy stuff when you've got to put two of those, your two halves of the shoulder pad together. I hate that. But the reason why they do that is because the steel mold, on the outside, the steel mold, those rivets start looking really weird. Because it'll break the model if they're trying to take it out the steel mold any other way. So, looking at this though, looking at it closer, let's look at this image, right? You can't really tell, right? If you really look, and you look at the small details, you can sort of tell, oh yeah, that's probably not a Games Workshop product. But looking at this, now you can tell. You go a bit further in, you can see all across this model, yeah, this probably isn't a Games Workshop sculpt, and if it is, they will want their money back. Because it has a lot of these mold lines, grid lines all over. Look at the metal part of the gun right in front of you, right? There are mold lines all over that. Okay, so it's not a bad looking model. It isn't. In fact, it's a really nice looking model. Well, I don't want to do that yet. It's a really nice looking model. But you can still tell when you look really, really, really closely. You can still tell, and I know from the horse's mouth that this is from a very good 3D printer, from somebody who knows what they're doing, right? But I'd still look at it at a tournament and go, ooh, that looks really good. Not a Games Workshop product though, is it? Because I can tell it's not, because it's been 3D printed, right? So, when I say quality, that's the standard of my quality, guys. If you want, I've challenged you. I've said, look, give me a model that's Games Workshop quality that I cannot refute. And this is why, when I saw this image, I was very excited. I was very, very excited. Until the person told me, oh no, these are Games Workshop models. Only the shoulder pads are 3D printed. And I was like, oh no. I thought I was finally going to get that model that I was like, yes, this is the one. This is the chosen one. You know, this is the guy who's going to, like, make Games Workshop release more models because he's doing really good 3D sculpts. But no. These are actually Games Workshop models with the shoulder pads on. So, as you can tell, if you wanted to 3D print the Marine on the left, I think you could very easily do that and get the standard up to what it should be, right? Very easily. And if you look at the rivets down on his leg there, if you see the ones that are facing the camera on the left-hand side model, yeah, that's why they're doing it in two parts now, because you will no longer get that weird longer rivet where it's taking out the steel mold. Now, I have not seen any Primaris squads or anything like that look as good as the guy on the right. Okay? The sculpts of Games Workshop Primaris Marines are top standard. Brilliant quality models. Especially when you get into things like Assault Intercessors, you know, and Reavers and people like that. These are all in really dynamic poses. That's a 3D printer will find really dynamic running poses super difficult to do. Super difficult to do unless you got a top quality 3D printer. Games Workshop, on the other hand, most of the Primaris Marines are running these days and doing like dynamic poses and stuff. So, you know, as you can I can tell, the one in the middle and the one on the left, you could 3D print those. I'm not saying you couldn't, because that's not Games Workshop standard anymore. It just isn't. Games Workshop standard at the moment for Space Marines is the guy on the right. And I've not seen... I've waited for months now for pictures. I've not seen any come in that have been like this. If you do have any, for the next video on 3D printing that I'm going to do, then feel free to send them to the Discord down below on the fan mail, and I'll be really happy to have a look at them. But yeah, Primaris Marines and Stormcast Eternals, things like that, the brand new stuff, I don't think anybody's 3D printing to a standard that I'd be happy to swap out my Primaris Marines for those, even if they're cheaper. Even if they're cheaper. Right? If I was going to have a big Horus Heresy army, though, then I could probably see, yeah, the quality's there. Now you're dealing with the moral quandary, as I said before. Do you want to get a fully 3D printed army and walk into a store that you've not supported with your cash in any way and put down your army and have a game? If you have the moral flexibility to do that, I would say all the power to you, but I don't think that's very respectable. That's just me, right? But I wouldn't. So I'd still only get 1 or 2 3D printed models for specific characters or things I wanted in my army. But anyway, let's move on. Now, what do I think 3D printing should be? Well, look at the shoulder pads. That's what I think 3D printing should be. Right? 3D printing should be that. It should be the parts that really make your army stand out. The parts that really make your army pop on the tabletop that Games Workshop don't sell, or that they charge an extortionate price for. If you want just shoulder pads, you're paying a lot of money for what these things are. So feel free to 3D print your bits as much as you can, my friend. Because bits on their own, it's really hard to see that they're 3D printed because they're so small. Okay? Now let's have a little look at this. Look at these bases. Look at these beautiful bases. Now, you know who you are. If you could 3D print me some bases, I'd be very interested because these are great. In fact, I would say this is the first time today where we've seen things that are Games Workshop standard. I mean that, like, absolutely. These are Games Workshop standard. These are the kinds of things right now that the average 3D printer is completely made to do. Apart from the one in the bottom right that kind of looks like a sphincter. You can keep that one. Not too sure I want that one. But the rest of them, absolutely brilliant. These would not be out of place on a tabletop. You'd think, wow, those are some top quality bases. Where'd you get those from? What store did you buy those from? That's what you would say. When they're painted and they're varnished and all that. And they've got stuff added to them. Man, these are top quality. And this is the kind of thing that I celebrate 3D printing for. I really do. They look phenomenal. And I really want some. You know, that's all I can say. So the small bits in an army, go for it in terms of 3D printing. Your shoulder pads, swords, little bits that really set your army apart, go for it, man. Because your army should be yours. It should look directly like yours and nobody else's. And I love that. That should be exactly how the hobby is represented in terms of 3D printing. In terms of 3D printing full units and armies, when then entering into a grey area where, number one, I don't think the quality is there just yet to swap out my entire Games Workshop collection for your 3D printed collection. And number two, I think there is a moral quandary there where we're looking at it through rose-tinted glasses and saying, well, we don't like Games Workshop, so it's great that they're not getting any money. But what about your local friendly game store? What about them? Well, I did ask a manager at a local friendly game store for their opinion on what they thought about 3D printing. And this is what he had to say. I'm not going to name him. If you're in the Discord, you'll know who this guy is. So, his opinion is, he asked the question. He said, a fun topic that's surely going to start debate is gatekeeping known scalpers. Should stores do it? Okay. Now, we went on in our conversation after this. I'll get back to the question in a minute. When I said, well, what's your opinion on recasters? Should they be allowed in the store? And to that he said, well, my opinion is recasts and 3D prints of readily available models like dreadnoughts aren't welcome in my store. 3D printed parts or unique sculpts that are inspired by Warhammer 40k, etc. are okay. It's a tight rope to walk, but I can't have people flaunting 3D prints of stuff I sell as it risks diverting sales away from the store. If you have a problem with that statement, how do I put this? How to put this diplomatically? You need your moral compass readjusting. Right? If you have a serious problem with that statement, you seem to me to be the kind of person who wants everything and is entitled to everything. You're not. Other people are entitled to make a living in this hobby because they're the people keeping it alive. And if you're not willing to go into a store and actually back them with your hard-earned cash, I ask what you're doing in this hobby in the first place. Right? I mentioned a friend of mine called Lawrence, who has featured in a few of my stories. He was in Durham University, and he was a, shall we say, a jock, right? Not into models whatsoever, not into anything like that. Had no inclination to get into anything geeky at all. Very popular lad. Tall, muscled, you know what I mean, that kind of a guy. And he got into Warhammer in a big way. And do you know what he did? He got 50% of his army from eBay. Actual models from eBay. So he's giving another hobbyist money, which is still putting money into the hobby. He's giving another hobbyist money to go so they can go buy another army, right? And then the other stuff he got was from online retailers and Games Workshop. And he had 2 or 3 armies within a couple of months. Just being clever like that. Searching for deals and stuff like that. And he had a full army. Now, he had no inclination of getting into Warhammer at all. He's not the kind of guy who'd get into it at all. But he got bit by the hobby bug. And he put his money where his mouth was. He didn't spend tons. He just spent, 500, 600 quid over 6 months, right? And he had 2 or 3 really nicely painted armies. Now, if you're not happy doing that, by the way, he had 2 or 3 armies, so if you go by army, it's like 200 quid over 6 months. If you're not happy doing that, right, in putting money back into the hobby, then I ask why you're here in the first place. Now, should we gatekeep people who can't afford models? Of course not. That's why I celebrate stories where people are helping other people out in the hobby by expanding the hobby, making sure that they're getting free models or they're getting, model exchanges, things like that. But there are ways and means of getting into the hobby that don't break the bank. There are. And people who tell you there aren't, I don't know where they live or what they're doing, right? eBay exists. Third-party retailers exist. Your friends exist. There are tons of ways out there to get into the hobby. Now, if he can do it, right, this broke, poor student can do it, who's terrible with money, right, at the time. If he can do it and still be okay, why can't you? Where is your excuse? Because I've seen some of the poorest people I know be able to afford this hobby simply because they do it in a clever way. There is another video on the channel that goes over that, but simply because they do it in a clever way, right? Without doing recasts, without doing tons of 3D printing, they've gotten armies, and they've had tons of fun with their friends. I've never had that much money either, and I've had armies. There's no excuse. There just isn't. Hobbies cost money. That's the world we live in. I'm sorry. That's just it's what it is. So, moving on to his question. I bet you're all looking at that sphincter base and you can't take your eyes away from it. Look at the sphincter base. Anyway, a fun topic that's surely going to start debate is gatekeeping known scalpers. Should stores do it? So, yes. If you own a store and somebody in your store is a known scalper, as in somebody who buys up a lot of stock and then sells it at a premium of like a 700% markup, that person can fuck right off. He is killing the hobby. They shouldn't be involved. Get rid of them. That's all I've got to say on that. Okay? Go fuck yourself. Stop ruining it for everybody else. So, I've now I've built up 3D printing quite a bit, and I've dumped on 3D printing quite a bit. Let's have a look at some really nice sculpts, just so I can give you a bit of an olive branch. Some of the things that I found online that I think are pretty fucking cool. So, we have the Eternal Crusader here. Now, if you look at this guy, this is absolutely cool. Look at the size of him compared to the new Mephiston. Right? Really cool. Really cool. And this... Now, bear in mind, we don't know what this guy is going to look like when he's 3D printed and he's sent to you, because a lot of these companies, they will 3D print one model in the absolute best way that they can do, and then they'll send you a model that doesn't quite look like that. Let's look at the reviews. Right, there's no pictures of the reviews. Okay. If he looks like this when he comes, this is a model that I would have no hesitation in getting. Okay, as I said, for centerpiece bits, for bits that Games Workshop don't produce, fine. There is no 40k style Sigismund model. Most of the 40k Black Templar stuff have loads of bits hanging off them, and you know, they have loads of candles, things like that. What if you just want a swordsman? What if you want an Emperor's Champion, right? Who isn't either 30 years old or in a static pose holding a sword aloft? Well, here's your guy, right? This is filling a need that Games Workshop aren't giving right now. And I'm really tempted to just fucking buy this guy. He's so cool. But if this is the standard, this is the standard that I want to see from 3D printing. If everyone was showing me shit like this, and they had it painted and ready to go, I'd be like, oh my god, I need to change my stance on 3D printing because this is great. Now, what you need to remember is, this is a business. This guy has a business, he has a lot of sales, and he has other stores, from what I know, right? So this isn't just one guy in his back garden or shed doing models. This guy has a top-of-the-line 3D printer. This is going to be one of the best that you can actually get, right? This is going to be an amazing standard 3D printer. And this is the quality he's able to reach. I don't think this is within the reach of most people in the hobby. Now, do not come on the comments and tell me, actually, my models look just as good as this, and I've got a 3D printer that cost me £3.50. Meh. No. Send me pictures to prove it, or don't say anything in the comments. Right? If you say to me, my friend does... No, I don't care, man. I want pictures. I want evidence. Because I've not seen any yet. I've seen decent models, but I've not seen anything that is a full squad of guys like this. Right? I would actually see this. I would say this is even better than Games Workshop standard for a lot of it. If Games Workshop released a model like this, it would sell out in seconds. And they could. They could do this kind of quality. You know? Anyway, it's the first guy. Now look at this. For a D&D part. Now, this is where we're getting top quality sculpts from 3D printing. These are the kinds of things that if somebody said, actually, I could 3D print a model from Age of Sigmar, a dragon from Age of Sigmar, that is better than Age of Sigmar. If you showed me this, I would say, fucking hell, yeah, you can, look at that. Because this is a gorgeous, gorgeous model. The problem is, if you look at the size down here, if you want it in any size that's any good, we're looking at, you know, £87. Because large isn't very large at all. If we're looking at, you know, something that's pretty big, 87 quid. £88. That's basically Games Workshop prices. You're paying Games Workshop prices for a non-Games Workshop model. It's up to you whether you think that that's fair or not, but that's just is what it is, you know. But it is an absolutely gorgeous model. It is. Okay. And this is where I think you should be looking for 3D printing. It's things like this. Look at these chainsaws, man. Look at that. Look how cool that is. That's so amazing. If you put that on a Black Templar and they're all running forwards with like cloaks billowing behind them, how fucking epic would that be? This is the kind of thing I would look at 3D printing for. Is little bits like this that you're just not going to be able to get from Games Workshop themselves. Well, have you ever looked at a Games Workshop model and thought, that's cool, but wouldn't it be cooler if you just had this, I don't like that sword, or I don't like that pose, or I don't like the fact that they're holding their swords in one hand. I want two hands, because they're going to cleave through the enemy as they're charging. This is the kind of thing that you want, okay? Set of 5, bit pricey, £10, set of 5. But anyway. Marine heads. Again, things that Games Workshop don't really do that good a job on. They don't. These guys are filling a need that I think needs to be filled. It'd be nice if they did 10 Space Marine heads, because there's you do squads of 10 most of the time. But these are really lovely sculpts. Again, let's hope that they come out of the 3D printer like this, because you never know. But do you have any pictures of them? No. No. Okay. Well, hopefully they come out the 3D printer like this. But if they did anywhere near this quality, this is exactly what you want to be looking at in terms of using 3D printing to accentuate your force on the tabletop. These guys I was very tempted by. These lovely beaky marines. Now, look at these. And these you can actually see. This is what I love it when people do this. This is what they actually look like when they're out the 3D printer. This is great. This is great because it lets the 3D printer really bog down on the details of one part of the model without having, you know, a full model to worry about, which 3D printing generally is not very good at, right? The parts of models, though, 3D printing is top-notch. Where I think Games Workshop need to be concerned is when 3D printing can do sprues. When 3D printing does sprues, that's when they need to shit the bed. Because that's when bits like this you can start to glue together to actually have a really nicely posed model that looks just like Games Workshop. And even here you can see mold lines and stuff, right? You need to like brush that off with a bit of warm water and things like that before you use it. But yeah, really, really nicely done. Nice stuff. And unlike the big Titan that we saw before, you know, the surface area is very, very small, so you could easily brush off those mold lines and things like that are on the model. Really nicely done. And again, even bodies I have no problem with if you use them sparingly. You know, if you're building a Citadel model with different parts of bodies, I don't think these are, you know, as good as Games Workshop. They're very blocky. You know, they don't have enough of a space between certain things on the model, like the loincloth and the legs. You know, on the guy on the right here, that's all one part, you know what I mean? So they don't look quite as good as they should do, in my opinion. But, very nice. And if we're looking at old style Marines, again, this accentuates my point beautifully. They haven't used a Primaris Marine here. Why do you think that is? Why do you think they haven't used a Primaris Marine to tell you how good their 3D sculpts are? Exactly. Because the Primaris Marines look better. They just do, man. I'm sorry. They do. Right? And these look lovely. These look lovely. You know? These look absolutely lovely. But it is just one of those things when you get in there. Now, was that it? Silver Dragon? Oh, yeah, this is one of my favourites, right? Silver Dragon. Now, this is gorgeous. This is absolutely gorgeous. We look at the details on the model. This could be a centerpiece for anything. You could put it on the tabletop. You could put it on absolutely anything that you want, man. You could be it an army or D&D or whatever. But again, the pricing is in large and small. If you want to go for a gargantuan one, which is essentially a tabletop standard dragon, a big large dragon, £90. Unpainted, £90. I mean, it's up to you guys, but again, I think whenever we're going to be seeing things like this, they're always going to be really expensive. Alright, they're always going to be super, super, super expensive. But that is my opinion on 3D printing so far. Okay? I really hope that you're not going to be too harsh on me. I really hope that you're going to give me a chance here. I hope that I've explained my points very saliently and that you've got, you know, exactly what you need. My opinion hasn't changed that much from last time. Last time I was very harsh in saying no 3D printing is as good as Games Workshop. I've amended that to say, no, do you know what? 3D printing is just as good as old-style Games Workshop miniatures. Just as good. Excellent stuff. What it isn't as good at is new Games Workshop miniatures. And I've not seen full squads or anything like that to tell me that I should chuck out all of my Games Workshop models for 3D printed models. Not yet, anyway. That just is what it is. And if you dissent with that opinion, then please give me evidence otherwise. Don't just tell me so-and-so Bob down the road's got a good army from... I don't care, man. If there's no pictures, send them to me. Please. So, that is all for today. I will be back tomorrow for some more Hobby Nightmares. Aren't you getting a lot of videos this week? And yes, I would like to thank, obviously, our backers as well. Thank you very, very, very much for helping me out. And if you want to support the channel, head on over to Composite Games and use the promo code Northern Exile down below to get 5% off of your order at checkout. In UK only. Again, working on US stuff. They're being more annoying than UK people. And what can I say, you know? Bigger stores, I guess. But hey, it is what it is. It is what it is. Love you guys, long time. Have a really good day. And I'll speak to you soon. Have a good one.